Welcome back to Legacy Builders, everybody. Um, this is part 2 of our father-daughter relationship, our story, parent-kid relationship. We're just gonna dive in. You'll probably want to watch part 1 of this because we're going to be continuing a lot of those things that we talked about in part 1. So yeah, welcome to part 2. Anything you gotta say about that?
Welcome back. Thanks for joining us. As always, we appreciate your support. We appreciate you joining us and taking the time to watch these episodes. We hope they're helpful. We hope they make an impact on your life, and we hope that you go out and build that relationship with your son, daughter, and build legacy.
Yes, absolutely. And again, if anybody has any questions, like at any point in time, feel free to email us or message us or comment any of those questions. We want to be able to help you as well and help you create your legacy and the best family that you can possibly create. So, yeah. So last time we talked about peer pressure. We talked about holding things over your kid's head. We talked about the disconnect. We talked about generational cycles. What else did we talk about?
Oh, there's
Respect,
yeah.
Trust.
Yep.
Communication, just a whole bunch of stuff. And so we're just going to continue down that path.
Yeah, there's a couple things we want to touch on again. And then a few topics we did not get to touch on that we think will be powerful today.
Yeah, absolutely. So just a slight, really slight recap. Our story, we talk about how this has been like years and years in the making of this relationship. And again, just to thank my dad because he really has put in so much time, put in so much effort to this relationship, and I'm just so appreciative of it. And so thank you again, Dad.
You're welcome.
And let's talk about that. Let's just start with respect. Let's talk about respect because obviously I very much respect you as a person, as a dad, as just there. I just respect you a lot. And so we talked about last time key components, key moments that caused that respect in me to really, really grow. And kind of always I think I had this respect, but there was a couple moments where it just like grew and it just took the respect over the edge. And just like everything, it develops in each stage of what that means in a parent-child relationship. And I think for that respect, we had a visual that we were going to start with.
Yeah, so let me just add on before we get into that visual. So when we talk about respect, that it comes from an understanding, or at least my understanding is that everybody's created equal, that God is no respecter of persons. Okay, so if God is no respecter of persons, we have a responsibility to treat each person that we meet in life at the same plane as we're at. We're not better than anybody else. We're not lower than anybody else. We operate on an even playing field. And when we have children, somehow people get this misconception that parents are up here and child is always down here. That's not what I wanted to. That's not how I wanted to operate. Okay, so we even in our legacy series, we talked about creating a family acronym. Well, in ours, we have an acronym. The E stands for equality, where we believe, that's one of our family mantras. It's one of our core values that we believe everybody is created equal. Okay, and so we don't treat people like we're better than them. We don't operate as though we're less than anybody else. All right, and biblically, God says He is no respecter of persons. Okay, so, and for those that don't have a spiritual basis, or please just follow me on this. It's going to help you whether you believe in God or not. Okay, the concepts and the principles are powerful, whether you add the spiritual tone to it or not. We just believe we are created in the image and likeness of God, and that His Spirit lives within each one of us. And so when I take that concept, and we have God, the source of this spirit being, and when He originally created man, He created him in His image and likeness, and He breathed His Spirit into man. So if we just generations later, we have that same thing. We have the source, God, and the Spirit lives within each one of us. We understand that we are born of spirit, mind, and body. So when again, we take source, this will never be depleted from source. He keeps putting his Spirit, allows the opportunity for Spirit to live inside of man. So I sit around the table. There's a famous knight, King Arthur, who has this same concept, the Knights of the Round Table, that he can sit at a round table and set aside his kingship and be on an equal playing field. And not we all, but many people respect that ideology of the Knights of the Round Table and the king coming to be on a level playing field. But in parenting, which one, spiritually speaking, which spirit is better? Which spirit is higher? Is it the daughters or the father or the fathers or the mothers or whoever this is? So in this concept, the spirit man, not the mind yet. Yes, the child's mind is growing to understand what this thing is that it lives within inside of them, the Spirit of God that lives inside of them. But we have this physical vessel. I don't care if this physical vessel is old, if it's young, if it's new, if it's black, if it's white. This spirit that lives in that dwells inside of this vessel is the same. And so when I raise my kids on this concept of equality, we're all equal. We don't demand respect from other people. Now we have to operate on a respectful level. So I have a meeting with them. I said, look, if you have a challenge, we can come to this table. You can ask me, you can challenge me on any question that you want to challenge me on. If I'm not doing right, I want you to tell me about it. I want an opportunity to correct that. If you do something wrong, I want to treat you with respect and bring the wrong. Because now, again, we're not talking about, this isn't at 5 years old. Yes, spiritually speaking, we're the same. And we should do some respectful things. But as we talked about in the last episode, it comes with a rod, or for me, it came with a spanking, a spoon one time. But at 20, this isn't the same. We're not dealing with a rod. We're dealing with respect. Let's talk about this. This is your safe environment. What have I done that has hurt you, offended you? What have I done wrong? Talk to me respectfully. Now I'm going to talk to you respectfully. This is what I see, that this is what you have done in this situation. We talk about the situations, but now we're talking about it diplomatically. All right, because the Bible also calls us royalty. We're kings unto God, kings and priests. So now, how do kings address each other in the real world? Do they make demands of the other kings? They don't. So when we look at people, when we look at each other, and now as I look at Madison, my daughter, now she's growing up and she's maturing physically. The spirit is we're still equal spiritually. There's no hierarchy. Just because I was born a generation before her doesn't make me any higher than her. We have to learn how to operate in respect. And so I spent a lot of time talking on respect and teaching on respect, and how that will then translate into other areas of her life. And even as I remember we would go to the restaurant, and I would have them. I said, you know what, we're missing this or that. Will you go ask the waiter or the waitress about this? And so you have a little 7-8 year old going up and talking to an adult. It was nervous at first.
Yeah.
Right. But I didn't want them to be nervous to talk to adults. I wanted them to know how to talk to adults.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just like to that whole example and to that whole equality, it starts in the home, and it starts with how we're treating each other. How are we supposed to treat other people equally if we don't even treat each other equally in the home? So I think that's an important factor, is that we start just in your own environment. And that was so appreciative that you did that example, and it was so impactful to me. And you didn't do this when I was 20. You did this when I was like 15. So imagine like a 15-year-old, like, wow.
Yeah.
That was the impactful thing, is going into high school, going into, those high school years when we all sat down and we talked about how I was equal. And along with that, we also, the lessons became how to respectfully, because you brought that disagreement, like, you could disagree. This is a safe space. Like, you also taught me how we could respectfully disagree with adults and how we could respectfully disagree with other people, with friendships, with all of that, and how just because they're older than you or doesn't mean that they have the right to disrespect you. Um,
because they're not just older, but in the authority position. Just because I send my kids to high school doesn't mean that teacher gets to talk to my daughter or my son any which way they want to. And so we talk to them about how to go and respectfully disagree. It's your responsibility to go and approach them. If there's a conflict, go to that person and try to resolve it. If they don't resolve it, then here's another step to take. If that doesn't work, you come and get me, and we're going to go have a little talksy with the teacher.
mhm. But that actually, to be honest, even started when we were younger with the bullying.
Yeah.
You always taught us that peers, like anybody, if first example you would teach us would be like, that's nice. Just don't give them any power back.
Right.
Would because the whole reason they're bullying you is to try to get a response out of you.
Yeah. To get a rise out of you, to
see that they hurt you.
Yeah.
To try to win. It's that
this-
winning moment.
yeah,
of-
if this is bothering you, so that's their victory and that's their
Yeah.
win. So they can say something, or unless we're not talking about physical bullying, we're talking about
right.
verbally, and they say something and you get mad and you want to say something back. Well, that's their entertainment.
Right. So
So,
you just
yeah.
taught us to say that's nice.
Oh, that's nice.
And walk away.
Yeah.
Like show no bothersome.
You're so stupid. Oh, that's nice.
We
Thank
would
you.
role play
Appreciate-
this though.
Yeah, we'd
We
role play.
would.
Yeah.
And that's nice. Cool.
Did you hear me? I said you're stupid.
That's nice.
That's nice. Appreciate that. Yeah. Have a great day.
And so you taught us from a young age to not let people disrespect us, peers, anything like that. And if the bullying didn't stop too, we were taught to go to an adult, to go to a teacher. If the adult didn't do anything about it, to go to a higher authority adult. And then if they didn't do anything, and then you told us to hit them back.
Well, that was
That was the escalated.
yeah. Before you turn it into physical, I did not allow them to, if they again, unless they're getting repeatedly hit or something. I mean,
yeah.
I'm not going to just say sit there and take it, but if they do something, you can go tell them, and
or come to you. I think that was actually the
come
fourth
to
step.
me. Yeah, the fourth step was come to me.
You, unless it was physical. Then you told us.
If it's right away physical, I just say hit them back.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't need to. You don't need to go. Yeah, if they start it, just punch them back. You may not agree with that, listener, but that's
that was what you taught us.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I don't think it ever got there. We didn't have to deal with that. I think after that's nice, nobody really wants to hit you. You just kind of they're like, oh, we're not gonna bother this person. And also when you're a kid and you're walking around with confidence, you're not a target.
correct.
They're not gonna, if you know who you are as a kid, like they're not gonna come after you. They might, but after the one that's nice, once you show that you are unbothered, that they're not gonna get to you, you're not a target. People aren't gonna try to come mess with you because they know they can't.
Right.
So that was the whole lesson of that. But all that to say, it was to know that you should not be disrespected by your peers. And then into high school, it translated by your teachers. And then into life, it translated by other people just because they're older than you or have a position of authority.
Right. A boss or a supervisor or something. So there's still ways to respectfully disagree, respectfully confront them, and talk, to talk about things. And that's what we would always spend time in our discussions, and how to do that and what to say. And
yeah. And I think that also translated. So there was multiple factors and facets to this equality and disrespect, and not allowing people to disrespect. And another factor was being a woman. And so growing up, you taught me that I was equal. Going back to that same scenario, whether you're a woman or a man, you have the same spirit, you are equal. And
this is not a male spirit and a female spirit. He said that he would make man in his own image and likeness, and he would make them male and female. The containers to be male and female. He would make man, the spirit of man, human. But then he separated, he made some containers to be male and some containers to be female.
But that doesn't mean
That doesn't mean the spirit is one above the other. When you look at that was his original plan for man. Now you want to talk about the hierarchy, that came after the fall of man. That came after when Adam got kicked out of the garden, which is a whole nother lesson we'll talk about on a spiritual thing. That's when the hierarchy started. That's not what God intended in the beginning. So we want to live life. I don't care if you're male or female. We're going to live by what the Bible said, that we were created in his image and likeness. We were created to be male and female, but the spirit man is the same.
So that was a very important lesson from you, and was constantly reiterated and still constantly just building that confidence, that reassurance, that identity throughout my whole life of just, you are not less than because you are a woman. You can do whatever you want to do. You want to be a business owner, you want to be a CEO, you can do it. Even though, it was never a conversation of just because you're a woman or because you're female. That was never a thing. And so I'm not out there searching for that identity to try to make up for that. I'm not trying to search for that confidence. I'm not trying to search for that validation. I know you've helped me to build that identity and know that it's okay. And I think that's so important coming from a father, especially, is that those words from a father cannot be replaced. Whether you say your daughter, your words so matter, especially to a daughter, especially to a little girl, of what you're saying. Just because if you say they can do anything, they are going to believe it. At 6 years old, if you keep telling them that they can do anything, they're going to believe it. If you tell them that they can't do something, they're also going to believe it, because you are their security, like we talked about in the first one. You are, at this point, at 6 years old, you are their foundation. And so, yeah, you just have to really build that confidence. You have to build that identity as a father, and make sure that your daughters know that they can do anything. That if you say or even allude to your daughter being ugly or fat or something like that, that's gonna stick with them forever. And so you can't do that. You have to be careful with your words, especially fathers, mothers too, but especially fathers.
Yeah, it hurts my heart when I hear parents, fathers, mothers, just make those comments to their children. Why would we do this? Why would we do this? You're supposed to be their foundation. You're supposed to be their security. Telling them they can't do stuff. They're stupid. They're fat. They're ugly. No good. Good for nothing. Why? What benefit does that have? You feel good about yourself? Does that make you feel good? I just don't get it. I really don't get it. And if you're a Christian, you're definitely not speaking in agreement to what God has said about them if you're saying those things. Please don't tell me you're a Christian and you're saying those things to the spirit man that God created in his image and likeness, and you're saying that to this? Really? Stop, please stop. Get in alignment with what God is saying about that child. Because that's not what he's saying. That's not what he believes.
Yeah. Your responsibility as a parent is to create that foundation for God, for their spiritual. At 6 years old, they can't read the whole Bible.
No.
They can't read what God says about them. They are counting on you to tell them what God says about them, to be that foundation, to be that security. So please don't ruin that foundation. Please don't ruin that security by telling them those things, because your words do matter. And so the seeds that you're planting will reap a harvest. The Bible says that there will always be a seed time and harvest. And so if you are sowing seeds of confidence in that child, they will reap those seeds of confidence. they will reap a harvest of confidence. If you're sowing seeds of anger, of hatred, of you're stupid, you're ugly, they will reap that and they will believe that about themselves. So just know that you are that foundation for the child because they don't know anything different at 6 years old or 7.
Right. And I would just, I mean, just to add on to that too, you don't have to believe in God to not say stupid things to your kids.
Yes.
I
for
mean,
sure.
that's just common sense, and the laws of seed time and harvest, like Madison just alluded to, those exist whether you believe in God or not. And so what benefit does it provide anybody to tell them these things? I always, I mean, that's a reflection of the individual who's saying them. It's not a reflection of the person they're saying it to.
Mhm.
And so if you need help, I mean, there's help out there for you. Just, man, stop putting those thoughts into your child's head. They don't need it.
Right. And we're so passionate about this right here because it is such an important thing. Yeah, it creates that kid's foundation for their whole life. And so your words do matter. And that's why we're speaking with so much passion of that. So yes, that is an important topic. And I am very grateful for our relationship and that you chose to sow seeds of confidence of I can do whatever I want. I'm a leader, like all of these things that you were like, I believe this about my daughter. And now I believe it too. And so all of those things, it's just, yeah, you told me that we're equal. I believe it. And so I believe that everybody's equal. And so when you see that in the way that I treat people, I don't treat people unequally. And that's our part of our family motto. And that's something that just didn't happen.
Right.
It doesn't just happen. You don't wake up one day and, oh, Madison's just treating everybody equal. That's great.
Right.
I don't know where she learned that from.
Wow.
Like,
Eric, you got the lucky one,
oh.
or two. I mean, all my kids are remarkable. And I mean, Riley just went into, again, this is our relationship, but I'll just give an example of these mindsets that we establish. And so Riley goes into the Navy, and I get a chance to talk to him, through his boot camp, which is really crazy. I don't even know if I could make it through boot camp, but he made it through. But so I would get to talk to him, and I asked him, I said, how are you doing mentally? How are you doing emotionally? I didn't really care about the physical part. I think he'll manage that. He'll get over it. But I wanted to know how he's doing emotionally, how he's doing mentally. And he said, well, I'm doing good, thanks to you. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, we have these classes during boot camp, and they teach us how to grow mentally and emotionally, and everything that they're teaching me, you've already taught me. And so I've been able to adapt and to grow, and not, I feel like I'm already ahead of the game in here. And so I'm like, well, that's reassuring for me, believe it or not, even though I come across like I know everything all the time. That's reassuring to me that I am doing the right thing and I'm making an impact and I'm preparing my kids for life. And when I hear stories of Madison coming back and, hey, you told me about this peer pressure and I did it, and this is what happened, and it builds that confidence, and she goes out and does it again and builds more confidence. And and the approval, let me talk about this for a minute. We got to a point, I don't know exactly what age it was, or what, if you remember this conversation, but you got to a point where you were worried about something that you did disappointed me, or that you're worried about me being disappointed. And I remember having this conversation. I said, look, there's nothing, I'm proud of you no matter what. There's nothing you can do that would make you a disappointment to me. So just get that out of you don't have to try to earn my approval. You don't have to work to earn my love. You don't have to work to earn my acceptance, to earn my respect. I love you unconditionally. I respect you unconditionally. You're not going to disappoint. There's nothing you're going to do. Will there be mistakes made? Yes, we all make mistakes. It's never about making mistakes. I'm not looking for my children to be error-free. I never demanded them to have straight A's in school. I said, let's do your best. I want you to do your personal best. And we talk about that. If this grade is your personal best, I'll accept it. If it's not, I'm just asking you to work a little harder and apply yourself. And those lessons, translated into life. And I mean, they excelled in school, but it was the confidence and it was the relationship that I was after. That the leadership skills and the relationship that would you remember that conversation? Or
I don't know if I remember that exact conversation, but just those words, hearing those, it's something about hearing those from your parent that's just so incredibly important. I feel like as a kid, you always fear that you are going to disappoint your parents. I don't, even if you have a great relationship, even if I don't know if it's a fear of disappointing your parent or disappointing yourself or disappointing society. I don't know where it comes from, but this disappointment fear, I think, comes up. So that reassurance from a parent, like to a kid, that means a lot. Yeah, I don't know what you have any more thoughts on that.
no, I think that just kind of segues into kind of one of the final topics we kind of want to dive into a little bit, is that unconditional love. And it's a whole in relationships, in general, in communication. Whenever we can build a relationship on the basis of unconditional love, it's going to be successful. And it's hard. It's really hard to explain. You hear people talk about it, but not necessarily always demonstrated, because in order to give love unconditionally, you have to have been able to receive. You have to know a little bit about this topic of unconditional love. And it was just simply that hey, you're going to make mistakes. I'm not worried about the mistakes. We'll work through it. I'm going to love you no matter what. You don't ever have to worry about something. Go ahead.
I was going to say, the Bible says to love your neighbor as yourself. And so in order to love your neighbor, you have to love yourself. And so that whole unconditional love, if you don't love yourself unconditionally, then you can't love others. And that doesn't mean, I think you can love, but to have that unconditional love is a different level of love. And so that I think you have to unconditionally love yourself and not be so hard on yourself and not have this like expectations or hatred for yourself or insecurity or whatever it is.
Yeah. And when we're talking about love, I mean, we're not questioning. We know, parents, that you love your children.
Right.
That's not the question. That's not what we're talking about right now. And let's make that clear. If we didn't make that clear in the first episode, we know you love your children. That's not the issue.
Yeah.
We know you care for them. We know you love them, just like your parents cared for you and loved you.
Right.
But you didn't.
But do they know? Do I know that you love me? Do I know that you care for me?
Right. The relationship and the receiving end. Yeah, we get it. You love them, but does she know that I love her unconditionally?
If it's not communicated that way, then, I mean, if I came to you with my mistakes and you started yelling at me for them, like, I don't feel like that would translate to unconditional love. You could love me, but it's not translated that way.
Right.
I'd be like, oh, he only loves me if I don't make mistakes.
Right.
That's what it's translated to me as. But if I make a mistake, he doesn't love me. So it's the miscommunication, the translation of, we know you love your kids. Deep down, they know that you love them and care about them. But it's just the same thing with the discipline, the boundary, the crossing the line. They're just seeing where that line of love lies as well.
Right.
If I make a mistake, do they still love me? If I mess up, do they still love me? If I get a C in school, do they still love me?
Right.
Like, they're just trying to test the waters in the back. They're not trying to, but they're just seeing where that line lies of how much is too much until they don't love me anymore.
Right. And so, kind of the final thing with that is, communication. And so how do you communicate? Back to the saying, kids, or people, not just kids, but in this situation, the kids don't care how much you know, or how much until they know how much you care. So how do we communicate this stuff? How do we communicate this love, this acceptance? I think we kind of gave a lot of those examples.
Yeah. And I mean, it mainly boils down to your actions, or I mean, what you say, what you do, like in the moments where it needs to be said, in the moments where you need to act upon that. I mean, like I said, if I came to you and said, Dad, I made a big mistake, and you said, I knew it, or something like
Right,
that,
right.
like, that doesn't translate as I know you care about me. It doesn't translate in communication. So I think, yeah, it basically boils down to your actions and what you say.
Is there anything else that would, just in your, as we're talking about this, that would, what are some other hindrances or things, we kind of shared our story, some things that we worked. Is there anything else that you can think of that would be a hindrance for parents in their relationship that may be outside of our story that we haven't talked about?
I feel like we covered a lot. I feel like we covered a lot of different things for that. I think maybe though in relationship, the different stages, it grows along the stages. And now in certain stages, it's like how you build the relationship is different. So how I was building the relationship with you in high school of asking questions and like that and gaining your trust, like I have your trust now. Like I have your, like I respect you. I know I trust you. Like all of these things have been built, and would be really hard to break at this point. And so, but now it's more of that, the love language, the quality time that I just want to spend with my dad. Stuff like that of now we're working together
Right.
in many different areas. We've got to learn how to navigate working together, and we've got to learn how to navigate doing business together and navigate still having a relationship and not letting our whole relationship only be about business
Right.
and about work. And so I think, yeah, every stage it's different. And so now if we want to talk about like our stage at where we're at now,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that is where we're at now. We're working together. We're building something together. We don't just work together in this. We work together in some other areas with your business and stuff like that. And
Yep.
so it's just navigating that. It's navigating in this, in your business, the difference and the levels of you being a little bit more boss, whereas this is we're equal. We're on the same exact playing field. And we both have thoughts in where we want this to go and stuff like that. And it's navigating all of that and then still making sure we make time to have a relationship outside of those things.
Right.
So yeah, that's an important stage. And when you're building legacy, like things change, and hopefully, I would hope that building legacy means that you're going to work with your kids one day. And so as we're learning this, we will share more. We're still learning and we're still developing, and we've had a lot of tough conversations, and a lot of those conversations boil down to, and I think with all relationships is the problem's never really the problem.
Right.
And so this is your phrase, Dad. So I'm gonna let you go ahead. I don't know if it's your phrase. I think you adopted it maybe from somewhere.
No, I mean,
actually, no, this is your phrase.
This is my phrase. So yeah, I wouldn't say it was something that I heard from somebody else. The concept I heard from somebody else, and I did coin this phrase that the problem is never really the problem. And someday I'll write a book on it. But right now, I mean, it's really been something that it's really helpful in building relationships when you understand that the problem is never really the problem. And I think maybe a good example, Madison and I were when we were starting our first podcast, we had a problem that had arisen. Yeah. And maybe you want to share a little bit on that?
Yeah. So with like our very first episode, our very first day we were going to record, I have a special needs brother. And so he got really angry, and my dad he had to help deal with that, help calm him down, and he was frustrated with it. And so me being a little planner and a little organized and not as flexible sometimes as I need to be was like, we were supposed to get 3 episodes done today. We haven't even started, and this and that. And so that's what was going through my head. He's dealing with that frustration. He came and he kind of he snapped a little bit, and I was like, I don't really like that tone. And so now we're supposed to go film our first episode on legacy and all of that. And I'm mad and he's frustrated. And well, he doesn't know that I'm frustrated. And so we were sitting here, we were coming up with an outline for the episode. And he was like, I can just sense that you're kind of angry, and just brought it up. And I was like, yeah. And so we kind of resolved, we got to a point where it was like resolved, but I was still mad. And I just heard in my head, the problem's not really the problem. And so I had to come and I had to figure out what the real problem was. And I don't think at the beginning, I didn't say that I was mad that you snapped at me or used that tone. And so once I'm like, okay, that was the real problem, I didn't like that he said it that way, then we could actually resolve it and we could actually come together. And so just that.
Well, and even more of the problem behind the problem. So there was this energy, that we could tell something was wrong. There was a problem, but the underlying root of the problem is this was our first podcast. Mm-hmm. She's nervous.
Yeah.
There's an anxiety, there's all these other emotions that are at play. And then when we're not hitting our timeline. So now the timeline is the problem, right? No, but that's not the problem. The problem is the nerves and all these other things that are behind the problem.
Right.
So then a lot of times we try to focus on this problem. Oh, it's scheduling. Well, let's do the scheduling and fix it, but it doesn't fix the problem because that problem is not really the problem. The problem was, I've never done this before. This is a new experience. I've never worked with my dad before. Here we are, we're getting ready to record a podcast. All these things and emotions going on that don't surface, but they surface in something else. And the focus becomes that being the problem, but that's not really the problem.
Yeah.
And so there's tons and tons of examples about this, but because it
actually did lead into a great conversation on opposition that we filmed a whole podcast about.
Right.
Because it was very much that opposition of it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be always what you want when you try something new, when you expect, like, you can't expect to go into something and you're never going to run into any problems. And so we kind of came up with, like, we had a great conversation about that. And the real problem was that I was feeling this opposition. I was feeling these nerves. I was feeling scared, like all of this stuff. And so that was the real problem.
Right. And as we develop, in where we're at right now in our relationship, and even in other relationships, when we do this episode on the problem's never really the problem, I mean, it's so helpful because we get so focused on dealing with this problem, but that's not what caused the problem.
And the whole part of, I think, the problem's never really the problem. When you repeat that to yourself, it helps you to reflect inwards on yourself. And it also changes your perspective to maybe see it from the other person's side too, of like, well, maybe like, what's the problem underneath their problem? Like, so you're trying to see, you're both coming together to try to figure out what the actual problem is so you can resolve it.
Right. And it's so helpful too, in communication and perspective. If we just take the time to see things from somebody else's point of view, somebody else's perspective, and not have to be right about everything, that's a lot of times one of the biggest hindrances or issues with the problem is never really the problem. There's a big argument, but the real problem is somebody thinks they need to be right about something. And then they end up arguing about this problem. But anyway, when you can just not have to be right and just work through the communication, see things from the other person's perspective, and that's what we're building right now. I mean, I have to see things from Madison's perspective, where it's different now. I mean, yes, I'm dad, but I'm more role model. I'm more coach for Madison now. I'm not disciplinary. I'm not, I don't have any, there's nothing I can do to discipline Madison, I mean, what that, I mean, yes, she's my child, but I'm not in a position to, bring discipline in a, physical, for sure, a physical sense. But, right now it's a matter of coaching.
Yeah.
It's a matter of responding. And that's what Madison's been great at. And, she responds very well to pressure. She responds very well to relationships, to communication. And, yeah.
Yeah, and we're still learning, we're still working on it. And so it's a new experience to navigate all of the working togethers and stuff like that. And um but yeah, I think if you remember, the problem's never really the problem. It's a great thing to go, like, to just bring up real quick throughout your arguments and stuff too. It's once it's nailed into you, when you're in the midst of arguing, your subconscious just brings that right back to you, and you're like, shoot, okay, what am I really mad about here? And so in the heat of the argument, if you can just self-reflect and remind yourself that the problem's never really the problem, that's just so important.
Yep.
And Dad, do you have any last things to parents, to kids, anybody?
I'll just leave this 2-part series. Again, this is our story on relationships, with us building a relationship. I was just saying, just encourage you, new parents, just take some time to study, learn, work on relationship skills, work on building. Yes, you're going to have to discipline your kids. You're going to have to help make corrections, but they really want security. They want to feel safe, especially with the dads. They want to feel secure. We're the foundation. I'll do a whole session on dads being the foundation of the family, and that's going to be really powerful. But you're specifically
speaking, not in this series, but in like our parenting.
Yeah, in the parenting series. Yeah. But they really, I mean, they're. It's not about what you want and what you think you want. Just take time to find out what your daughter or your son is looking for. Spend time just building the relationship, because you being right is going to be momentarily. It's going to be a win for you in that snapshot in time. But building the relationship is legacy. Focus on legacy. Look at the long term of this. I mean, Madison and I have where we're at and what we're about to influence and impact people with would not happen if I just was so intent on doing it my way and happened to be right.
Nope. Or if you went out and built your own thing.
Yeah, if I went out and built my own thing, stayed out late, didn't worry, came home, provided for the family. Hey, I'm out being the provider, which is honorable. It's great. But the kids and my wife suffer because I didn't want to take time to talk to them, build a relationship. Then later on, being the provider isn't the same dynamic. There's not the huge stress at that point, but you didn't take time building those relationships. So now where are you at with your children? Where are you at in those relationships? It's never too late. You can still start at any time. Start with just, what I would recommend, if you have if you don't have the relationship that you would desire, you can start at any point in time. Just go up to your son, your daughter, whatever. In this particular situation, again, we're talking about relationships here with son and daughter, to say, look, father, daughter, and just say, look, I've neglected a relationship. Where we're at right now is not where I intended to be. I wanted things to be stronger. I'm sorry. Can we work together? Just apologize. Can we start over? Will you forgive me? And can we start building this foundation? It's not going to be easy. It might be tough going on, but then just start turning that ship and just start, be humbly working together, build at a relationship where whatever age that's at. You can make changes, they're earlier in the relationship or the age of your daughter would be easier. But even if it's later, I don't care if she's 40 years old. I don't care if she's 50 years old. Just go, hey, look,
there's so much power in that humility.
Yeah. just
part of
be,
it.
in that humility. And I don't care if you have to write a letter and start it that way, but break the wall down, start breaking that wall down and open the lines of communication, open the lines of relationship. Just throw out your ego and just start operating, humbly with your daughter. And I think you'll be surprised at how quickly you can build relationship if you humbly go to them and take the time to start building something.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, we're going to thank you for joining us. And I think we left you with a lot of thoughts for this first part of relationship series, and we have so much more to come. We've got a lot of great guest speakers coming on to talk about friendship, to talk about marriages, all kinds of relationships. And we're going to be back to talk about father-son relationships, mother-daughter relationships. So stay tuned. Thank you for joining us, and just know that you can build your legacy and you can build your relationships no matter what age.
Thanks so much for joining us today on the Legacy Builders podcast. We would love to hear from y'all. Go tag us on Facebook and Instagram and let us know what your biggest takeaway from today's episode was.